I've been in many countries and mixed with many men. I've shared their days of sunshine, gone with them in the rain. The fires at evening said we were brothers. The fires at evening said we were brothers.
A soldier I saw weeping beside a dying friend.
My officers had preached I must hate him till the end. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers.
A man sat on a doorstep to see the children play. Then turned away, he smiled, there would charm your fears away. A stranger he, but love made us brothers. A stranger he, but love made us brothers.
One day I climbed a mountain with friends of other lands.
The words we used were different, like joy one understands. Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. The words and customs vary like waves upon the sea. One life beneath the surface binds everyone to me. Who knows himself knows all men as brothers. Who knows himself knows all men as brothers. Then brothers, why endeavor to set ourselves apart? The fences we've been building squeeze tight upon our hearts. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers. I love soaring with the meadow larks. Love has made my heart gay. I've known them forever. They've haunted my slumber and called to me out of the deeps of space. The love that they promised has helped me remember another time, a caring embrace. Another time, a caring
I will sing you one song in Bengali, and then I'll start talking. Amar sadhana mitilo, ashana purilo, shokoli furae jai ma. Amar sadhana mitilo, jonomer sund dakhi go matore, কোলে তুলে নিতে আয় মা, শখ উড়ে ফুরায় যায় মা, আমার সাধনা মিটিল। এই পৃথিবীর কেউ ভালো তো বাসে না, এ পৃথিবী ভালো বাসিতে জানে না। এ পৃথিবীর কেউ ভালো তো বাসে না, এই পৃথিবী ভালো বাসিতে জানে না। যেটায় আছো শুধু আছে, যেটায় আছে শুধু ভালোবাসাবাসি, সেটা যেতে প্রাণ চায় মা, মা। সকলি ফুরায় যায় মা, মা। আমার সাধনা মিটিল। জনম জনমে বড় রাগা পেয়ে বাসনা তেজেছি, বড় জলাশয়ে কেমন ভুগেছি, বড় রাগা পেয়ে বাসনা তেজেছি, বড় জলাশয়ে কেমন ভুগেছি। অনেক কাঁদেছি, কান্দিতে পারি না, বুক ফেটে ভেঙে আয় মা, মা। সকলি ফুরায় যায় মা, আমার সাধনা মিটিল। I'm an American, but my father is my spiritual father, so in that sense I'm Bengali. As an American, I want to tell you how I came to him, because I knew absolutely nothing about Indian teachings, Indian philosophy, but I was seeking truth all my life, and I sought it in many ways through science and so on. I was born into a well-to-do home, and money meant nothing to me. I told my father when I was 16, he said he wanted to buy me a tuxedo, now smoking, whatever you call it in this country. I said, don't bother, Dad, I'll never wear it. I said, in fact, I'll never earn enough money to pay income tax. And it proved to be true. But I just didn't care about money, but I did want truth. And I tried in many different ways. And finally I thought truth must be whatever inspires me. And then I decided that every path I had followed came to a dead end. I didn't know where. I was desperate. And I remember I was studying to be a playwright, and I gave that up because I thought, I want to share truth with people. I don't know truth. Why should I share my ignorance with them? And so I gave that up, and I was desperate. Can you turn off your phones, please? And I remember one night I went out into the night saying, if there's a God, what must he be? And I came to a very Vedantic conclusion, because I realized I was asking it consciously. Therefore, God must be consciousness. And if he is consciousness, then to find truth I must open myself to him more completely. I thought I was going crazy. I didn't know of the saints in the world. I thought I was the first human being on earth who had ever thought of seeking God. And I thought I must be going mad. But I decided there's no alternative. If I had to go mad, then I had to go mad. And at this time, God took over. And he arranged for my father to be sent to Egypt to explore for oil there. He worked for Esau. The very day that I put my mother on the ship to go join him, I went uptown New York. I found a bookstore. I went in there, and I found a section on Indian philosophy, and I saw Autobiography of a Yogi. It had only been out 2 years then. I didn't know anything about yoga. I thought it might be some kind of yogurt. I didn't know the concept of guru. Everybody I had met was not somebody I would want to follow. I didn't want to follow anybody because I didn't find anybody wiser than I was. But when I read that book, it completely changed my mind. I had two desires in life: to find truth and to share truth with everybody. I've always been a very enthusiastic type of person, and whenever I find something good, then I want everybody to know about it. But as I was crossing the country, I thought I will find God and I will give him to other people. I had thought that God was, I might find peace of mind in finding God. And I had thought to go to a Brazilian jungle and spend my life. I thought the world's better off without me unless I can find that peace. When I read Autobiography of a Yogi, and I found what deep joy and what deep love people can experience in finding God, it was overwhelming to me. I saw that he was a vegetarian. I became a vegetarian immediately. I saw that he was a monk. I would be a monk. And as I was crossing the country, I was thinking, I will find God and I will help everybody to find him. When I came to Hollywood Church, he was speaking there. I didn't hear the speech. I came later. And they told me I couldn't see him. I said, well, I have to see him. Now he's got his appointments are filled for 2 months. I thought, oh my God, 2 months. I couldn't breathe. And I finally thought maybe I needed a lesson in humility. As I started to go out, I thought I'll live in the mountains nearby and come to church, and when I'm ready, when he's ready, I'll see him. The secretary came and said, since you've come all the way from New York, 4 days and 4 nights, I will ask him now. His appointments are finished. And then a few minutes later, she came back and said, he will see you. And some people have asked me, what was your impression of him? I had plenty of impressions, but that first moment, I was just so desirous of being accepted by him. I had no room for impressions. I just was thinking, I can't speak. I know you know my heart, but I can't speak my heart. You know it. You know if I'm ready. And he talked to me for about half half an hour, and then he said, I give you my unconditional love. Will you give me yours? I said, yes. He said, will you give me your unconditional obedience? And I thought, well, I've never given that to anybody. What can I said, what if I think you're wrong sometime? I had to be honest. He said, I will never ask anything of you that God himself does not ask me. I said, in that case, I give you my unconditional love and obedience. So he had me kneel in front of him and take the vows of discipleship. And my life just changed absolutely. I remember I was in such confusion. Every 15 minutes I would have to sit down and calm my mind. All these teachings were completely new to me. I didn't know anything about these truths. And yet here I was committed to a life that I couldn't see any point in living without that. I found him to be a man of extraordinary depth and compassion. Looking into his eyes, one thing I noticed always was that there was no ego there. There was just God flowing through him. I used to feel often in his presence as if I was in the presence of God. I know years later, when I came to India and I got to meet Anandamoyi Ma, she was like a mother to me. My guru was like a father, but I always held him in such awe. He spent lots of time with me. After I'd been with him very few weeks, he had me come out to the desert and was teaching, and he spent more time with me maybe than most others. He said, you have a great work to do. And he put me in charge of the monks. He told me I had to lecture. I said, that's one thing I don't want to do. He said, you better learn to like it. That's what you got to do. And there was such a perfect charm in his nature. He was not pompous. He didn't look down on people. He had this perfect respect for people. You'd think that everybody would give him respect. He had that respect for everyone who came. The merest fool, he had that respect for. There was a man in a hotel lobby who saw him, and he said, hello there. He was drunk. He said, hello there, Jesus Christ. And Yogananda said hello, and he decided to give him a little touch of bliss. And the man says, hey, what are you drinking? And Yogananda said, well, it has a lot of kick in it. But he had a wonderful sense of humor. He sometimes would have me laughing so hard that I could hardly breathe. But yet at the same time, when he didn't want to be funny, he was very serious. It was always, the amazing thing about him was that it was like living in the presence of God. I remember walking with him out at his desert retreat. I helped him with the editing of his Gita. And by the way, that's the greatest scripture in the world. And the way he interpreted it, it makes it all the greater. But he would sometimes almost fall, and I would hold him up to keep him from falling. He said, I'm in all bodies. It's hard for me to remember which body I am in. I remember a story that Devi Mukherjee, he lived in Calcutta. He told me that he was with Master in the car, and they were driving in Los Angeles. Master suddenly said, stop the car, stop the car. And he got out and he walked back a few doors to a variety shop. That was a very poor-looking shop. And he went in and bought certain things, and Debbie thought, well, what's he buying this junk for? And he came and he paid the lady. When the lady at the owner took his money and he gave it to her, she burst into tears. She said, I was very badly needing just this sum of money, and God himself must have sent you to me. But he never talked about these things. He got in the car. I don't think he ever used what he bought. But he didn't say anything. He never would talk about his miracles, but he performed some amazing miracles. Mr. Black, he was one of Master's most advanced disciples. He told me this story. That one time he was visiting our Guru in Encinitas, and Master sent the message that he wanted to go out for a ride with him. So Mr. Black looked out the window. It was pouring rain, just as the heaviest monsoon rain, very hard. And Mr. Black said, well, he must know what he's doing, so I'll go. And he imagined that they wouldn't even be able to see out the car window. It was raining so hard. And he looked as he left his room, it was still raining. Just a few yards to the door, he walked out the door, it was blue skies, no spot of rain on the ground or on the car, everything completely dry. And my Guru looked at him with a smile and he said, for you, Oliver. Well, how somebody could change the dream is amazing. Divine Mother had sent a rainstorm, and yet suddenly there was no rainstorm. How he could do that? But there were lots of things. I remember I was one time asked to give the yoga pastor Sing Me Today when I'm nearly 87. You don't think of me as a hatha yogi. I wasn't either, but I was pretty good at it without the interest. And so they asked me in Beverly Hills to give a demonstration of yoga asanas. And when I finished the talk, a very materialist, atheistic Beverly Hills psychiatrist, that doesn't mean much to most of you, but Beverly Hills psychiatrists, almost bound to be atheists. Anyway, he tried to talk me out of my foolish beliefs. And I told him about a few miracles, and I could see him thinking, well, Wednesday I can see this patient at 11 o'clock. And I didn't make any impression on him. Well, often I would serve Master's guests when he came, and then after they left, he would sit and talk with me. And this day after the guests left, I was at the table with him, and he used to call me Walter. My name is Donald Walters, but why he called me Walter, I don't know. Anyway, he said, Walter, when you're with crowds and you're with atheists and people, don't talk about miracles. I said, you knew. He said, I know every thought you think. And he showed it to me again and again. People have sometimes said, well, wasn't that embarrassing to you? No, I was happy. I wanted him to know even my worst thoughts because I wanted him to correct me. But it was amazing to me. He not just my thoughts, he knew all of the disciples' thoughts. One time James Collar, he was a minister in Phoenix, Arizona, and he was coming to Encinitas where Master was living. And we were all vegetarian, but he was extremely hungry. And the only restaurant that was open late at night was a restaurant that only served hamburgers. And he thought, oh, well, he won't know. And so he had 2 hamburgers. And Yogananda, after he reached Encinitas, was talking to him. Yogananda said to him, by the way, James, when you're on the highway late at night and you come to a place that has nothing but hamburgers, better not eat anything. But you couldn't get away with anything because he knew every thought you thought. It was like living with God. It really was. And his sense of humor, when I came to him, I was much too intellectual. I sought God through intellect. I didn't know about love and so on. Being with him, I developed devotion, but I didn't have it in the beginning. I had to analyze everything. And one time we were at his desert retreat, and he had somebody bring a bag out, and he turned the lights out, and suddenly I was waiting for some important lesson. Suddenly, buzz, 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 a little pistol with the shot rays of sparks of light. And he turned the light on. He said, "How do you like that, Walter?" I said, "It's fine, sir." I was just overwhelmed. He said, "Suffer little children to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of God." And he was like a little child. He had no pretensions, no pompousness, no anything. A great saint is not self-important. He was not self-important. But yet at the same time, he was so wise, and he could give you, I don't think, that was his particular mission. I don't think I know. Mind you, I want you to know one thing. I'm not talking of my guru as the greatest. Too many disciples talk of their gurus as the greatest. It's all God. God has his play through many saints. One time we were looking at the movie of Ganeshwar, and this disciple from Bengal said, "Oh, if you had seen Meera, then you would hate this one." Yogananda said, why talk of hate? It's all God. It's his show. And so my guru had a particular mission, and it's a wonderful mission. I've dedicated my entire life to sharing that mission with people. But at the same time, I want people to know that I'm not sectarian. I don't think he was the only one. All great saints are alike in God. But he was an avatar. Do you know what it means to be an avatar? You've seen the movie, maybe, Avatar? That is not Avatar. People speak of in my avatar as a banker. That's not the meaning of avatar. The meaning of avatar is that when you have meditated deeply, you go into samadhi. And there are two kinds of samadhi. You can fall from the first one, sabikalpa samadhi, because you have retained the ego. When you come back here, if it makes you feel self-important, you can fall. I think I fell in many, many lifetimes ago that way. And many do. That's the final test on the path to God. But if you go beyond that, you reach nirvikalpa. And in nirvikalpa samadhi, you're completely free from ego. But you have to remember all your past incarnations, and that can take a long time. Of the saints in autobiography, there are very, very few that attained that state of moksha. And as you remember yourself, it was God as a pirate. You remember that God played all the roles that you have played. And when you've overcome all those memories, so that you're not overcome the ego of this life, but remember in all those lives, it was He dreaming you. Then you attain moksha. Moksha means completely free from everything. Most people, when they attain moksha, that's it for them. They've been at it for a long, long time, and they figure enough. There are very few souls, after attaining moksha, who have so much compassion for humanity that they will come back to this world to help other people. Such a one was my guru. Such a one is Babaji. Master said that Babaji was Krishna, and that he said Lahiri Mahashaya was Raja Janaka. He said he himself was Arjuna. These are souls that have come back a long time. It's a fascinating story. But when you have found that state, my guru wrote a poem, God's Boatman. And he said, I will come back if need be 1 trillion times, as long as one stray brother is weeping by the wayside. That kind of compassion, where you delay your complete merging in that Satchidananda, that absolute bliss, in order to help other people. That was the compassion he had. And in these ways, I have to say that I have met very few who have that kind of compassion. And yet it was a compassion that could be stern sometimes. He sometimes had to be very rigid. I remember, though, there was always a sense of humor in it. He was one time, I was sitting at the table with him after the guests had left, and he was trying to get a fork into a glass, and he kept flicking the fork, and it would miss it. And finally, Finally it got in the glass and the glass broke. He looked at me with a smile. He said, "But I got it in." I think he was teaching me a lesson. Once you start something, do it. Finish it. Everything he did, there was a certain lesson in it. One time he asked me, "Why does the Earth not shoot out into space?" I explained to him. I thought he was learning a lesson in astronomy. And I said to him, "Well, that's because the force of the centrifugal force of the sun, of the Earth, keeps it, I forget, it keeps it tied to the sun and doesn't go away from the sun. It stays in its orbit." Anyway, I realized months later he had been teaching me a lesson of the soul and God. God loves us. That's why we can't get away from him. But we love Maya, and that's why we try to get away from him. Everything he said had a subtle teaching in it. He had, as I said, an absolutely wonderful sense of humor. But it was a humor that was, I remember sometimes he wouldn't necessarily keep his spiritual and the human side apart. There was one time in Boston that when one of his disciples, Dr. Lewis, said that there was Master was dressed in his orange robe, and this man was riding a bicycle, and he saw this man in an orange robe, a Hindu, and he made a face at him. He came to a big puddle of water, and the wheel came off his bicycle. He went sprawling, and Dr. Lewis was Master's sense of humor was delightful on all levels. But when I worked with him on the Gita, he had certain missions. Every saint, every avatar especially, comes with a mission. In the Gita it says, sometimes I incarnate myself on earth as an avatar to destroy evil and to put virtue back in its throne again. And this is the role of an avatar. He could be very fierce sometimes, and yet it was always in defense of evil. When he talked in America, he talked to overflowing crowds. Sometimes there would be many people turned away because the 5,000 people in the hall couldn't fit inside. One time, he was very strong. He would be up on the stage, and he asked for strong people to come and hold him. He would lean his back against the wall, and they would try to push him there, and he'd arch his back, and they wouldn't be able to keep him down. One time in Boston, there were 5 or 6 policemen, big, strong men, came up. Everybody thought, "Oh, this time he'll be licked." And they were pushing on, and he said, "Are you ready?" Yeah. And he arches his back. They fell over into the orchestra pit. One time, I spoke of his being strong sometimes in ways that had to be corrective. There was a young man there, very powerful, who thought that he would come up and beat Yogananda up when Yogananda was young. And then he'd go around boasting to everybody how he had beaten up this fraud. And Master was meditating on his bed. And he saw this man coming up the stairs. When the man came to the door of the bedroom, Master said, "I know why you're here, but I want you to know I'm very strong. I could easily beat you up, but I won't stoop to that. Still, I warn you, don't cross that threshold." "Go on, prophet." He crossed the threshold. He fell to the floor. He cried, "I'm on fire! I'm on fire!" He rushed down out of doors, down the stairs, and was rolling in the ground, crying, "I'm on fire! I'm on fire!" And Yogananda came down and touched him, healed him. The man wouldn't even go back inside. But sometimes Master had to give a strong lesson. But the love in his heart, the love in his eyes, in his presence, even without seeing him, or I could see him, but I've had laser surgery, so I can see well now, but in those days I needed glasses, and without glasses I couldn't see his expression. But I would feel these waves of love coming over me, or waves of bliss. It was just, I can't begin to tell you What a thrilling experience it was. It was, as I said, like being in the presence of God himself. He knew my deepest needs. He knew my deepest... He used to tell me, because he always had a special role for me. He wanted me to be a teacher. He said, your role in life is teaching, writing, editing. He didn't speak of communities because he knew that it was not time to talk about that. I had to do that outside of his organization. But when I was 15, I had already wanted to start communities. So I was in that. But he told me lecturing, writing, editing. I said, sir, haven't you written all the books that can be written? He said, don't say that. Much more is needed. And I've written now almost 150 books, but all to try to explain his teachings in different ways, for education, for life, the arts, every phase of life. I've tried to see in what way his teachings could apply. He came to this world to show one thing more than anything else, that the Christian and the Hindu religion are the same religion. Christ taught Sanatana Dharma. Christ was not a Christian, or I should say he wasn't a churchianityist. He didn't believe in churches, but he came, this is what he told me. I'd been with him less than a month when he told me that the 3 wise men who came to the birth of Christ were Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, and Sri Yukteswar. And I asked myself the question, then where did he fit in? Yogananda. And as I worked on his book, the Revelations of Christ, I saw that the personality of Yogananda and of Christ was very similar. I believe he was Christ. At any rate, when Christ grew up, he took he went to India to learn again. Everything he taught, it was the teaching of Sanatana Dharma. Hinduism is not the religion of idols. In fact, idol worship is not Hinduism. Ideal worship, yes. Idol worship, no. But Sanatana Dharma says the basic teaching is this: we have all come from God. We're all his dream. And our goal is to merge back into that dreamer once again. He's made a very clever show of it. It's easy to be an atheist. It's easy to be all sorts of things. But gradually you learn. The first message he brought to America was that everybody in the world is seeking only one thing: happiness. Everybody in the world is also seeking to escape pain. This was his first book. He went to Japan when he was a young man. Those of you who've read autobiography know this. When he came back from Japan, he didn't like Japan. They were too sensual there. But on the way back, he got the idea for this book. And he had a disciple, Yogananda, write it because his English wasn't very good then. And I rewrote it because Yogananda was a pompous ass. Excuse me. He was just very learned, and that wasn't master spirited at all. But the simple message of that book is simply this: that you want to find happiness. And the reason you want to find happiness is that you are a manifestation of God's dream, and God's nature is happiness. It's Satchitananda, ever-existing, ever-conscious bliss. And Master added to that phrase, ever-existing, ever-conscious, ever-new bliss. And to my mind, that explains why God did it all in the first place. He's always new. He has to create himself every now and then, but you are dreams of his. You are dreams of his bliss. And your whole billions of incarnations, who knows, you may have been around for days of Brahma, but your whole purpose has been to find that bliss. And if you're an evil person, or I should say a person who lives in evil, Master used to say, never call yourself a sinner. He said a saint is a sinner who never gave up. And I found that was true too. I'll come back to that, to the other in a moment. I want to tell you though, when I had decided as a 21-year-old boy that I wanted to find truth. I wanted to be a hermit. And I thought, well, who ever heard of hermits who smoke? And so I had to give up smoking. Well, it was the easiest thing in the world to do. Like Mark Twain, he said, I've done it 1,000 times. So I'd give it up in the morning, and at lunch, with my coffee, I wouldn't want my cigarette again. And yet I never said, and I want you to remember this truth, I never said, I have failed. I always said, I have not yet succeeded. And after a year, I just gave it up, and it didn't mean anything to you. So don't worry about your sins. Don't worry about the mistakes you make. God doesn't look at those. He looks how much you love him. If in the midst of sin, you love him still, he will take you out of it. So, in this search for truth, for help for God, never call yourself a sinner. He always saw you in your potential as a child of God. Sooner or later, it may be in this incarnation, but it's not likely. It may be. It may be in 2 or 3 lifetimes. It may be in 1 billion lifetimes. Do you remember the beautiful story of Chaitanya? One time, the different disciples were asking him, when will I find God? And he said, well, in this life, or 2 lifetimes, or 3 lifetimes, whatever. And those who were thinking 2 lifetimes, oh God, 2 lifetimes. And his most advanced disciple came into the room, and they were all asking him. They said, ask him when he'll find God. So he said, well, Master, when will I find God? He said, it'll take you another 1 million lifetimes. And they thought, oh, poor man, this is terrible. And they saw him outside, and he was dancing. And they said, didn't you hear what the Master just said to you? He said, yes, my brothers, rejoice with me. Didn't you hear him promise I would find God? What does it matter how long it takes? And then he brought him in. Chaitanya brought him in, he gave him the touch of God right then. So don't worry about when you find God. One time somebody said, though, I don't think I have very good karma, Master. Master said, you must remember this. It takes very, very, very good karma even to want to know God. Look at the streets of the cities. There are very few people who think of that. The fact that you're in this hall tonight means that you have very good karma. I'm not going to say very, very, but very. Because you want truth, you want God. When you want God deeply enough, he will send you books, he will send you teachers. When you want him deeply, you don't have to look for a guru. He will come to you. He came to me when I didn't even know what the guru meant. I didn't know I needed a guru. I did know I needed help. But when you seek God deeply, he will send you the means by which you can find him. When you love God, I didn't know love of God then. I knew truth of God. But love of God was more difficult. I spent many days singing Emon Din Ki Hobe Matara and other chants that Master translated into Bengali. And I tried to develop devotion, and finally I began to feel it. And finally I began to feel it intensely, and I came to see that the intellect is really a very insignificant part of our reality. It's the heart that matters. Master said that the 4 aspects of mind, Mon, Buddhi, Ahankar, Chitta. He said these have their location in the body. Mind is here. Buddhi is here. Ahankar, ego, is here. Chitta is here, feeling. You notice that people, when they're proud, they look down their noses at the world because the energy is tense here. When you feel, that's why women especially, because they go more naturally by love, but when they feel an emotion, they clutch their hearts. And this is the natural place to feel. Do you know medical science has discovered that the heart has as much capacity to understand as the hand? There are as many nerves in the heart as there are in the brain. And you can understand better when you feel it by heart. Always, at least, this was in my favor. If a thing didn't feel right, I rejected it. I had to feel that it was right. I didn't know about devotion, but I came to that. When you love God, it really, like that beautiful song of Ram Prasad, will that day come to me when saying, Mother, Mother, my eyes will flow with tears. Yogananda's life was primarily to help people to understand that aspect of God, that God is love. But love can be particular. If you're particular, then it's not true love. Love has to be without ego. The first thing you have to do on the spiritual path is to get rid of this sense that I am separate from you, that I am separate from God. Your ego is just a delusion. It's a delusion that makes you think you're Bengali or French or German or whatever it might be. It's only a delusion. You're that temporarily. You'll be so many other things, but you are none of them. Don't accept any definitions as a self-definition. Don't accept the thought, I'm a man or I'm a woman. Don't think of the thought that I'm old or I'm young. Don't think of any self-definition. And if people want to insult you, thank them. And if people want to treat you as unimportant, thank them. I was at a conference many years ago on the opposite side of America from California, where I live, in the state of Virginia. And it was a man who was trying to create a community. And he called all these famous teachers together. I was the only one there who had started a successful community. None of the others had tried. But I asked all the other teachers out. They were people on the lecture circuit. They lectured in public and so on. So to them, I was not important. I was just this person living in California and writing a few books. So they kept talking to each other and ignoring me, although I was paying the check. And I thought how absolutely wonderful to be completely unimportant. This is what we must be. We mustn't look for self-importance. If people put us down, thank them. It doesn't matter. Try to be completely insignificant in yourself, and then gradually you will be able to get out of it. There's something else than that, though. You have to do your best to overcome ego, but the delusion of ego is already planted in that effort to overcome it, so you'll never overcome it by yourself. In the Bible it says, as many as accepted him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God. My guru often, he didn't talk this way in public, but with us disciples, often he would speak about the importance of attunement. If you're in tune, everything will go right. Tune in to my thoughts, tune into my consciousness. He talked very frankly about that. Because you see, the guru, the most important thing that the guru has to give you is his consciousness, his freedom. The more you tune into him, the more you begin to feel that he's your reality. You may think, and this is the natural way for the ego to think, well, I don't want somebody else's reality, I've got my own. You don't lose your reality by losing your ego. In attunement with the guru, you become that reality. Really, the more I tuned in to my guru's consciousness, the more I realized that that's what I was, that my nature is Satchidananda. And the wonderful thing is that you become more truly you. In other words, God, when you find God, you don't become a sort of a blob of humanity. Each person retains his humanity, as even in moksha, even in union, complete union with God, there's still that memory that I, or Ashish Banerjee, or so-called Chakravarti and so on, you remember all those past lives, And that gives you a certain uniqueness, even in God, because that memory is never lost. And so when you come back into this, when people pray to you as Saint, whatever it might be, there you yourself respond to that person, not just God. It's God in you, but that memory. So when you pray to Dhyaneshwar or Yogananda or different ones, it's still that person who answers you from God. It's an amazing truth we're a part of, and you are a part of that. If you attune yourself with the Guru, remember, he will ask you to obey him completely. Most people don't like that. But once I understood, I said, that's it, I will obey you. And many times I would see, he would scold me sometimes, not often, but when he did, I would look into his eyes and I would see he didn't want to have to scold me. He was so full of compassion, so full of kindness. His basic nature was kind, but sometimes he had to show power. One time he was with a nun up in the third floor interview room, and there was one of the monks at the other end of the room, Jean Haupt. And Master, you'd have thought the roof would fly out the way he was scolding this woman. But every time he turned his back he was starting up and down, but every time he turned his back to him and looked at Jean Haupt, he'd wink his eye, smile briefly, then turn back like that. It was all an act. He wanted her to take seriously what he was saying. But always there was kindness. Always there was a gentility. And he was a gentleman, truly, in the best possible way you can say it. You know that he's Triguna Rahitam. When you attain that state, you go beyond the three gunas. But it's God himself in that form. One time I remember, I was sitting with him in his desert retreat. I spent a lot of time with him there. And he was editing his Gita, commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. And I was sitting there and I was thinking how fortunate I was to be his disciple, and what a great blessing it was. And after he finished his work, he had me help him stand up, and he held me up by the hands, and he looked into my eyes. He said, just a bulge of the ocean. He never thought of himself. He didn't say, he said, God is the Guru. I'm not your Guru. God is the Guru. He said, I killed Yogananda many lifetimes ago. No one dwells in this temple now but God. So when I talk to you about him as a human being, that's all I can do about it. Otherwise I just have to close my eyes and not talk. So we have to say something. And I have to say that in his humanity, it was the ideal in every level. His kindness, his generosity, his gentility. One time he came back from, he used to use a cane. I think it was because it made him think of the danda. And so he went to buy a new cane. And this shopkeeper, it was a very poor-looking shop, but Master, because he was representing an organization, tried to bargain him down, get the best price possible. After that, he looked at his shop and he said, this is a very poor shop, and he gave him much more money than he'd won in bargaining with him. And when he came back, and the man said, you're a gentleman, sir, and he gave him another umbrella. When Master came back, he said quite sincerely, he said, we're poor, he had linoleum on the floor, I think I'll buy him a carpet. But this to a shopkeeper he'd never met before. This kind of love that he had for everybody. Like that drunkard in that hotel lobby. He must have seen something to say the hello Jesus Christ, but he didn't know. Master said he just touched him. He wanted everyone to find this. And many times, because mind you, he was new. He was a new phenomenon in America. America didn't know about masters. America hardly knows about saints. And he had lots of opposition. Especially church people would try to persecute him. There was one time when there were 2 gunmen waiting at the elevator to shoot him when he came down. He just didn't come down. But one time he was in Lakeside Park, and in America he often dressed in ordinary clothes, mufti you might say, and there was this policeman. Master went to Lakeside Park, and this policeman tried to stop him from going in. He said, "That's not safe after dark." He said, "I don't mind. God will take care of me." And so he went and he sat down and watched the moon coming up. Just then there was this big thug came and he said, "Give me a dime." That means 10 cents. We give him a dime. "Give me a quarter." That means 25 cents. So he gave him 25 cents. "Give me 50 cents. He gave him 50 cents. "Give me $1. Master figured this was going on long enough, and he stood to his feet. He said, "Get out!" And the man just began to shiver and shake all over. He dropped his money. He said, "I don't want your money. I don't want your money." Ran for his life, and Master just sat down and enjoyed the moonrise. When he came out, the policeman said, "I saw you with that man. Even I didn't dare go to him." "What did you talk about?" "Oh, we came to a little understanding." But Master met so many types of people, hundreds of types. He was the most popular lecturer in America in his time. Thousands would come to his talks. Nobody ever came in those kinds of crowds. And yet, he had to realize that not many people will follow. One time Dr. Lewis was with him in Minneapolis. There were 5,000 people. And Dr. Lewis said, "This is wonderful, sir." He said, "We'll be lucky if we get 5 people for the classes." That's exactly how many they got. He, however, was completely even-minded. Nothing ever touched him. I never saw him excited. I never saw him hurt or angry. I never saw anything but absolute even-mindedness. I have patterned my life after him. Whenever I think, how should I react to this, I think, how would he have reacted? And then I try accordingly. If there's anything which I can do with my life that I want to do, is to help you to know what a great master he was and how he can help you even now. He was one of the very rare souls that come into this world. I am blessed that I lived with him, and I hope you feel some of that blessing. God bless you.